The handcuffs bit into her wrists as Major Elena Rodriguez walked through the Pentagon's most secure corridor, not as a hero, but as a traitor. 12 operators dead in Syria. Evidence bearing her fingerprints, her retina scan, her voice. America's top military minds waiting to condemn her. But when she lifted her green eyes to face Admiral Marcus Stone across that war room table, something flickered in her expression, not fear, but calculation. And in 72 hours, that look would destroy a decorated admiral's entire career. Before we dive into this story of betrayal, deception, and one woman's impossible fight to clear her name, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss how this ends. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's get into it. The tribunal room smelled like old wood and anxiety. Elena Rodriguez had been inside the Pentagon hundreds of times, but never like this. Never with Marine guards flanking her hands resting on sidearms, never with her service record reduced to a single accusation, treason. She took her seat. The handcuffs clinked against the chair's armrest. 7 senior officers sat elevated before her, arranged in a semicircle. At the center sat Admiral Marcus Stone. 38 years of service, 3 combat deployments, a Silver Star from Fallujah. His jaw looked like it had been carved from granite, his eyes the pale blue of Arctic ice. He studied Elena the way someone might examine contaminated evidence. "Major Rodriguez." Stone's voice rolled through the room like distant thunder. "Do you understand the charges?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, Admiral." "And how do you plead?" She let 3 full seconds pass. Finally, she spoke, voice steady and clear. "Not guilty, sir." A murmur rippled through the observers. Stone's expression didn't change, but something tightened around his eyes. "Not guilty," he repeated slowly. "Despite evidence showing your access credentials downloaded classified operation files 72 hours before our operators were ambushed. My credentials, yes, but not me. Your fingerprints on the server room access panel. I've accessed that room dozens of times. I'm an intelligence officer. That's my job. Your voice authorization code inputted at 0247 hours. Voice synthesis technology exists, Admiral." Stone leaned forward. "Your retinal scan." Elena held his stare. "Retinal scans can be duplicated. High-resolution photography, contact lens technology, 3D printing, it's all in the technical briefings I wrote 2 years ago. Briefings you personally signed off on." The Admiral's jaw tightened. To his left, Brigadier General Patricia Walsh raised an eyebrow. Colonel Sarah Mitchell sat at the far right of the panel, head of Pentagon cybersecurity, barely 40 with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. She'd been watching Elena with intense focus since she'd entered. "Major Rodriguez," Mitchell spoke up, voice clinical. "If someone did frame you using sophisticated technical means that would require intimate knowledge of our security systems, who would have that level of access?" Elena turned to face her. "Someone in this room." The silence that followed was absolute. Stone's hand slammed down on the table. "You're accusing this tribunal. I'm stating a fact, Admiral." Elena's voice remained calm. "Whoever framed me knew the technical specifications of our security and the operational details of the Syria mission. Deployment schedules, communication protocols, exfiltration routes. That information exists in maybe 25 minds in the entire U.S. military. 10 of them are sitting in this room right now." "That's absurd," General Raymond Cortez growled from the left side. Army through and through, old school, chest full of ribbons, and a face that had seen too many wars. "What you're suggesting is that one of America's most senior officers is a traitor." Elena turned to him. What I'm suggesting, General, is that 12 operators are dead, and the person responsible wants everyone to stop looking once they've convicted me. 12 good men, Stone said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Under my command. One of them was my godson, and you sit there in your handcuffs and lecture us about justice. For the first time, emotion flickered across Elena's face. I knew them too, Admiral. Captain Reynolds bought me coffee every morning for 6 months straight when I was pulling overnight analysis shifts. Lieutenant Morris drove 3 hours to help me move apartments because everyone else was deployed. Sergeant Chen taught me how to field strip an M4 in under 2 minutes because he said every analyst should know their weapons. Her voice caught just slightly. I knew these men. I worked with them. I would die before I betrayed them. And yet they're dead, Stone said. And the evidence says you killed them. Captain James Torres sat slightly behind and to the left of Admiral Stone. He'd been Stone's aide for 3 years. Loyalty legendary. Reputation spotless. But he was frowning now, his eyes moving between Elena and the Admiral. And Elena noticed something. His left hand kept touching his phone in his pocket. Once every 45 seconds. Regular. Compulsive. Like he was checking for a signal. Elena's hand, still cuffed, pressed flat against the table. Then let's talk about that evidence, sir. Because it doesn't make sense. Mitchell leaned forward slightly. Explain. The download timestamp shows the classified files were accessed at 0247 hours 3 days ago. But according to my duty logs, which you have, I was conducting a security briefing at Fort Meade at that exact time, in front of 47 witnesses, including 2 senators and a deputy director of national intelligence. Alibis can be fabricated, Cortez said. With senators, sir, with congressional oversight committees. Elena shook her head. That briefing was recorded, time-stamped. I can give you the names of everyone present. Mitchell was already typing on her tablet. Torres's hand went to his pocket again. 43 seconds that time. Stone's expression hadn't changed. You could have had an accomplice access the files while you established an alibi. Then why would my credentials show up? Elena countered. If I were planning treason with an accomplice, why would I be stupid enough to use my own access codes? Why not use someone else's stolen credentials? Why make myself the obvious suspect? Because you're arrogant, Stone said flatly. You thought you'd gotten away with it. Or because someone wanted you to think exactly that. The room fell silent again. Elena could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment, the disgust. But she could also feel something else, doubt. Small cracks forming in their certainty. Torres checked his pocket again. 38 seconds. Mitchell set down her tablet. Major Rodriguez, you said the evidence doesn't make sense. What specifically? Elena took a breath. The download logs show 847 megabytes of classified material were accessed in 17 minutes. That's about 50 megabytes per minute. But the maximum transfer rate from those servers, even with top-tier access, is about 32 megabytes per minute. It's physically impossible to have downloaded that much data that quickly from inside our network. Mitchell's eyes narrowed. Unless someone had made modifications to the server infrastructure. Unauthorized modifications, Elena said, which would require sustained physical access over multiple sessions. I don't have that kind of access. But someone with administrator privileges does. You're reaching, Cortez said. Making wild accusations. Am I? Elena's eyes locked on his. Then explain this, General. The files that were downloaded, do you know what they contained? Cortez hesitated. Operational intelligence for Syria. Communication frequencies, personnel rosters, extraction protocols. Yes, but also something else. Elena paused. Embedded in one of those files was a security report I wrote 3 months ago detailing vulnerabilities in our biometric authentication systems, specifically how our retinal scanning could be defeated using advanced 3D printing techniques combined with high-resolution imagery. Mitchell went very still. You're saying someone read your report on how to defeat our security measures, then used those exact techniques to frame you. I'm saying the person who framed me needed to know those vulnerabilities existed. They needed to have read that report. But that report was classified top secret SCI. Distribution was limited to 15 people. Elena's eyes moved across the panel. Everyone in this room received a copy. Torres's hand froze halfway to his pocket. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Stone's voice was ice. You're accusing this tribunal of conspiring against you. I'm saying someone with access to that report set me up. And that person knew enough about the Syria operation to get 12 men killed. Elena's voice hardened. So yes, Admiral, someone in this room is dirty. And until we figure out who more people are going to die. Torres's phone buzzed, loud enough that several people glanced his way. He pulled it out, looked at the screen, and his face went pale for just a fraction of a second. Elena saw it. Enough. Stone stood abruptly. This tribunal will adjourn for... The lights went out, not gradually, not with a flicker. Just instant, complete darkness followed by the electronic whine of systems shutting down and the distant wail of security alarms. Emergency lighting kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing everything in crimson. The panel members were on their feet, hands instinctively moving toward sidearms. The Marine Guards had moved into defensive positions, weapons drawn. Torres was staring at his phone, and Elena could see his screen from where she sat. A single message glowed there. Compromise detected. Initiate purge protocol. Mitchell had her laptop open, fingers flying across the keys. We're under cyber attack. Someone's hitting our network's hard, targeting intelligence systems, specifically Syria-related operational files. What? Stone moved around the table toward her. How is that possible? This facility is air-gapped, physically, isolated. They're inside already. Mitchell's voice was tight. This isn't an external breach. Someone with internal access opened a back door, and now they're pulling data out in real time. Elena stood up, handcuffs, forcing her to move awkwardly. When did the attack start? Mitchell didn't look up. Approximately 30 seconds ago, right when... She stopped. Her eyes flicked to Elena, then to Stone. Right when we started discussing the security report. That's not a coincidence, Elena said. They're listening. They heard me getting close to the truth, and now they're destroying evidence. Or creating a diversion, Stone snapped. He turned to Torres. Captain, secure Major Rodriguez. If this is her plan, it's not my plan. Elena's voice rose for the first time. Think about it, Admiral. If I had accomplices capable of launching this kind of attack, why would I let myself get arrested? Why would I be here in handcuffs instead of halfway to Moscow? Torres stood frozen, his weapon still holstered. Mitchell's fingers stopped moving. Her face had gone pale. Oh God. What? Stone demanded. They're not just pulling data. They're deleting files, overwriting sectors. Whoever's doing this is trying to erase evidence. She looked up, eyes wide. Admiral, this is a scorched earth protocol. They're burning everything connected to the Syria operation. Elena's mind raced. If they destroyed the evidence, she'd never prove her innocence. But more than that, if they were willing to burn everything, it meant they were desperate. Let me help, she said. Everyone turned to stare at her. What? Stone said. Let me help. Elena rattled her handcuffs. Colonel Mitchell, you need someone who understands the network architecture, who knows the security protocols inside and out. I wrote half the systems they're attacking. I can help you stop this. You're insane, Cortez said. You expect us to trust you. You don't have to trust me, but you need me. Elena looked at Mitchell. Tell me I'm wrong, Colonel. Tell me you have time to brief someone else on the security architecture while they're actively destroying evidence. Mitchell's jaw worked. Her eyes moved to Stone, back to Elena, then to her laptop screen where lines of code scrolled past. She's right. We're losing data every second. If we're going to stop this, we need— No. Stone's voice was absolute. We don't negotiate with traitors. Captain Torres, remove the prisoner to a secure holding area. Colonel Mitchell, initiate full network shutdown. Kill everything. Admiral, that's exactly what they want, Elena said urgently. A full shutdown means all the logs go dark. We lose any chance of tracing where the attack is coming from. They vanish and we never find out who's behind this. She's right, Mitchell said quietly. If we shut down now, we lose our chance to track them. Stone whirled on her. And if we don't shut down, they steal every classified file we have. I won't risk national security on the word of a suspected traitor. Then you're not thinking clearly. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral, whoever framed me, is executing this attack right now. They're in this building. They have the kind of access that can launch a cyber operation in the middle of the Pentagon. And you think they're going to stop with just deleting files? Stone's face was rigid. How dare you? They killed 12 men to cover their tracks. Elena pressed on. What's a few more? What happens when they realize a network shutdown won't be enough? What happens when they decide to eliminate everyone who knows too much? She paused. Everyone in this room has seen the evidence. We all know too much. We're all loose ends. Walsh spoke for the first time in several minutes. She has a point, Marcus. If there is a mole with this level of access, we're all potentially compromised. This is ridiculous, Stone said, but there was something in his voice now, the first hint of uncertainty. You're suggesting someone would attack the Pentagon itself. I'm suggesting someone already did, Elena said. 3 days ago when they downloaded those files and got 12 operators killed. This attack isn't new. It's just the endgame. Mitchell looked up from her laptop. Admiral, I'm detecting something. The attack pattern, it's sophisticated, but there's something familiar about it. The code structure, the approach. Her eyes widened. This is military-grade intrusion software, not foreign. Ours. That's impossible, Cortez said. Our offensive cyber tools are locked down, compartmentalized. Which means someone with high-level clearance authorized their use, Mitchell finished. Someone in the chain of command. The officers looked at each other. The unspoken question hung in the air. Torres's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and his hand moved toward his sidearm. Elena saw the motion. Colonel Mitchell, the attack signature, does it match anything in our database? Mitchell hesitated, then started typing again. Checking now. If this is one of our tools, there'll be a digital fingerprint and authorization code. She stopped. Her face went white. Oh no. What is it? Stone demanded. Mitchell slowly turned her laptop around so everyone could see. A single line of code glowed in the emergency lighting. Authorization Stone MVADM 047821. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Stone stared at the screen like it had just materialized from hell itself. That's my authorization code, but I would never— Someone's using your credentials, Walsh said, but her voice carried doubt. Or he's the one doing it, Elena said quietly. Stone's head snapped toward her, rage flooding his features. You set this up. This is part of your plan. Admiral, think. Elena's voice was urgent but calm. If I was sophisticated enough to frame myself, break into our networks, and launch a cyber attack on the Pentagon, would I do it this badly? Would I leave your authorization code just sitting there for anyone to find? Torres moved. Not obviously. Just a shift in his stance, weight transferring to the balls of his feet, combat positioning. She's right, Torres said quietly, and everyone turned to look at him. The captain's hand was on his sidearm now. Sir, this is too obvious. It's either a very stupid criminal or— Or someone framing the Admiral the same way they framed me." Elena finished, but her eyes never left Torres. She'd seen that stance before. She knew what came next. Mitchell was typing furiously. "I'm pulling the access logs for Admiral Stone's credentials. If someone cloned his authorization codes, there should be patterns, duplicated access points, impossible timing." She stopped. This time she didn't look up. "Admiral, your credentials have been used to access classified files 127 times in the past 6 months. "That sounds about right," Stone said, but his voice was uncertain. "I review classified material every day." "From 17 different physical locations," Mitchell continued, "including times when, according to your official schedule, you were in transit or in meetings." She looked up, expression-stricken. "And there are financial transactions, encrypted cryptocurrency payments routing through offshore accounts." Her voice dropped. "Admiral, someone's been using your credentials to move money. $2.7 million over 18 months. The room exploded. Voices overlapped, denials, accusations, demands. The Marine guards moved closer, unsure who to protect. Torres had his weapon drawn now, not pointing it at anyone, but clearly ready. Through it all, Stone stood motionless, face ashen. "This isn't possible," he whispered. I would never." Elena watched him carefully. She'd studied human behavior for years, had interrogated prisoners, and analyzed defectors. She knew what guilt looked like. Admiral Marcus Stone looked terrified. "He's not the mole," Elena said. Everyone turned to stare at her. "What?" Walsh said. "He's not the mole." Elena's voice was certain. "Look at him. If he'd been selling secrets for 18 months, if he'd planned this operation, would he look like that? Would he be standing here exposed, looking like his world just ended?" She shook her head. "No, he's another patsy. Someone used his credentials the same way they used mine." "But the money," Cortez started, "is probably evidence planted in accounts with his information, same as the digital evidence implicating me. Whoever's doing this is thorough. They don't just frame one person, they have backups, contingencies." Elena's eyes moved across the room, studying each face. "They're playing us against each other." Torres's grip tightened on his weapon. Mitchell's fingers flew across her keyboard. "If she's right, then the real operator is someone else. Someone with access to both your credentials and the Major's. Someone who could move between security systems without raising flags." Her eyes widened. "Someone who's been in this room the whole time." The realization hit like a physical wave. Torres's hand came up fast, weapon leveling. But not at Elena. At Stone. "Nobody move," Torres said. Stone's voice was confused, hurt. "Captain, what are you—" "Shut up!" Torres's hand was rock steady. 3 years as an admiral's aide. 3 years of perfect access, perfect trust, perfect cover. "Everyone put your hands where I can see them. Now." The officers slowly raised their hands. The Marine guards had their weapons up, but Torres had positioned himself perfectly, using Stone as a shield close enough to the door for escape. "Captain Torres," Walsh said carefully, "you don't want to do this." "Don't I?" Torres's smile was cold. "You're going to let me walk out of here. 30 minutes head start. Anyone follows me, Admiral Stone dies." "You served with me for 3 years," Stone said, voice cracking. "James, I trusted you. I brought you into my home. You met my wife, my daughter. You were convenient." Torres kept his weapon trained on Stone's head. "A decorated admiral with access to everything. Easy to manipulate, easy to frame when the time came. Honestly, Marcus, you made it too simple." Stone flinched at the use of his first name. Elena's mind was racing. Torres was good, had positioned himself perfectly. But he'd made one mistake. He'd assumed everyone else was unarmed except the Marines. He'd forgotten about the tactical baton on the guard's belt 3 feet from her position. "You killed those 12 operators," Elena said quietly, voice designed to pull his attention. Torres's eyes flicked to her for a fraction of a second. "They were collateral damage. Would have died in some desert eventually anyway. You sold them out for money. I sold information for a cause you're too naive to understand." Torres's voice hardened. "This military, this government, it's broken, corrupt. Sometimes you have to burn it down to rebuild something better. That's what you tell yourself." Elena kept her voice conversational, sympathetic. She needed him focused on her. "That you're some kind of revolutionary. You're just a traitor, a murderer who killed better men than you'll ever be for a paycheck." Torres's finger tensed on the trigger. "Shut your mouth." Elena moved. The handcuffs limited her range, but she'd trained for that. She pivoted hard, shoulder driving into the nearest Marine guard, throwing him off balance. His weapon discharged into the ceiling as he fell. In the chaos, Elena's hands, still cuffed, shot out and grabbed the tactical baton from the guard's belt. Torres swung his weapon toward her, but he'd lost his positioning. Stone threw himself backward, years of combat training overriding shock. Walsh was diving behind the table. Elena threw the baton, not at Torres, at the emergency lighting panel 6 feet to his left. It shattered. Sparks sprayed. The red lighting died. In the sudden darkness, muzzle flashes lit the room like strobe lights. Someone screamed. Weapons firing, too many officers, and guards shooting in panic and confusion. Then the backup lights kicked in. Torres was on the ground, clutching his shoulder where one of the Marine guards had shot him. 2 guards had him pinned, weapons trained on his head. Blood spread across the floor. Stone was alive, shaken but unhurt, pressed against the wall. Mitchell had her hands up. Walsh was already on her phone calling for medical and security. Elena stood in the center of it all, still in handcuffs, breathing hard. Torres looked up at her, pain and hate warring in his expression. "This changes nothing," he gasped. "There are others. The network. You think you won? This isn't over." "Yes," Elena said quietly. "It is." Mitchell's laptop chimed. She looked at the screen, expression transforming. The attack stopped. Whoever Torres was coordinating with, they just went dark. "Can you trace them?" Walsh demanded. Mitchell's fingers danced across the keyboard. "Maybe." "Torres's phone. Someone get me his phone." One of the guards retrieved it from Torres's pocket, handed it to Mitchell. "Colonel?" The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman stood there, older than most in the room, with silver hair and a general's stars on her shoulders. Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the Intelligence Support Activity, the military's most secretive special operations unit. "Admiral Chen," Stone said, confusion evident. "What are you doing here?" Chen walked into the room with the authority of someone who'd never been questioned. She looked at Torres, bleeding on the floor, at Elena, still in handcuffs at the chaos. Then she smiled. "Ending this operation," she said. "Colonel Mitchell, cease your trace. Stand down." "Ma'am." Mitchell's confusion was obvious. Chen turned to the Marine guards. "Remove Major Rodriguez's restraints. Now." As the guards fumbled with keys, Elena's handcuffs clicked open. She rubbed her wrists. Stone was staring. "I don't understand. What operation? What's happening?" Chen walked to where Torres lay and looked down at him without sympathy. "Captain Torres, you're under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and selling classified information to foreign intelligence services." She gestured, and 2 of her own security personnel came in to take custody. "And the others?" Elena asked quietly. "Contained," Chen said. "Your performance here flushed out the last of them. The network is secure." Walsh found her voice. "Admiral Chen, would someone please explain what the hell is going on?" Chen turned to face the tribunal. "What's going on, General Walsh, is that for the past 18 months, This woman, she gestured to Elena, has been running the most successful counterintelligence operation in the history of U.S. military intelligence. Silence crashed over the room. The Syria ambush was real, Chen continued. 12 operators died. But their deaths revealed something we'd been hunting for 3 years, a network of compromised personnel selling operational intelligence. Captain Torres was part of that network. So were 6 others, and we never would have found them without Major Rodriguez's work. Stone's face had gone completely white. The evidence against her was manufactured by us, Chen said. We needed to create a scenario where the network would reveal itself, so we created the perfect suspect, an intelligence officer with access accused of the Syria leak. We knew that if she was arrested, if she was about to be convicted, the real network would have to act. They couldn't risk her finding proof. They had to destroy the evidence. And reveal themselves, Mitchell breathed. Exactly. Chen looked at Elena. Major Rodriguez, or rather Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, volunteered for this mission, knowing it would destroy her reputation, potentially her career, possibly her life. She allowed herself to be arrested, all to draw out the network. Elena spoke. The 12 operators weren't part of the operation. Their deaths were real. We failed to protect them. But we stopped it from happening again, Chen said firmly. And we burned a spy network that's been active for 5 years. That was the mission, Colonel. You executed it perfectly. Torres, being dragged toward the door, laughed a wet, pained sound. You think this ends it? You think we're the only ones? He looked at Elena. Black Widow, they call you. But even spiders get caught eventually. The guards hauled him out. The door shut, muffling his laughter. Stone slowly sat down, looking 20 years older. My God, he whispered. I wanted to convict her. I was so certain. That was the point, Elena said quietly. We needed everyone to believe it. The more convinced you were of my guilt, the more confident they'd become. And your call sign? Walsh asked. Black Widow? Chen answered. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez has been running deep cover counterintelligence operations for 6 years. She's helped dismantle spy networks in 4 countries, prevented 2 major intelligence breaches, saved hundreds of American lives. She's one of the most effective operatives in the United States military. And after today, her usefulness in deep cover is over, which is why we chose this moment for the reveal. Mitchell closed her laptop slowly. So this entire tribunal was theater. Necessary theater, Chen corrected. We had to make it real enough that Torres and his network would believe it. You all played your parts perfectly, even without knowing. Without our consent, Cortez said, anger in his voice. You manipulated this entire tribunal. To catch traitors who got 12 men killed, Elena cut in, voice sharp. Yes, General, we manipulated you. We lied to you. And I'm not going to apologize because it worked. Torres is in custody. The network is compromised. No more operators are going to die because of people in this building. The room fell silent. Finally, Stone spoke. What happens now? Chen's expression softened slightly. Now you all go back to your jobs. This tribunal is dissolved. There will be a classified briefing in 72 hours. In the meantime, you discuss this with no one. As far as anyone outside this room knows, Major Rodriguez was exonerated due to new evidence. And unofficially, Walsh asked. Unofficially, Lieutenant Colonel Elena Rodriguez just saved American lives at great personal cost. And this country will never be able to properly thank her. Chen looked at Elena. The Moscow station compromise we got word 10 minutes ago. They need you. Elena nodded once. No hesitation. No complaint. Mitchell stood. Colonel Rodriguez I'm sorry. For doubting you. You were supposed to doubt me, Elena said. That's what made it work. She moved toward the door, then paused and turned back to Stone. The Admiral looked broken-haunted. "Admiral," Elena said quietly. "Those 12 operators, they died serving their country. Their sacrifice gave us the opening we needed. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it means something." Stone's eyes were wet. He nodded, unable to speak. Elena Rodriguez, Black Widow, walked out of the tribunal room. Behind her, the most powerful military minds in America sat in stunned silence, processing what they'd witnessed. Admiral Chen paused at the door. "One more thing. What you saw here today, Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez's composure under pressure, her tactical thinking, her willingness to sacrifice everything that's not unusual for her. That's just Tuesday. Remember that the next time you think you know what courage looks like." Then she was gone. In the hallway, Chen caught up with Elena. "The Moscow operation." "I know," Elena said. "How long do I have?" "Wheels up in 6 hours, briefing on the plane." Elena nodded. 6 hours. Barely enough time to shower and pack. Not enough time to process what had just happened. But she'd never had that luxury. "Colonel," Chen said, voice almost maternal, "what you did in there, taking those accusations, maintaining cover, under that pressure, exceptional work." 12 men died, Admiral. And you used their sacrifice to break a network that would have killed hundreds more. Chen put a hand on Elena's shoulder. "This is the work. This is the burden we carry. We serve in the shadows. We take the losses. We make the impossible choices, because we're the only ones who can." Elena looked down the corridor toward the exit, toward the next mission. "The war room went silent when you revealed my call sign," she said quietly. "But the real silence is the one we carry: service without recognition, sacrifice without applause." "That's the life you chose," Chen said. "Yes, ma'am, it is." 6 hours later, Elena Rodriguez was on a military transport headed for Moscow, carrying documents under a false name, wearing a face that wasn't quite her own. The tribunal, the accusations, the moment she'd stared down an admiral, it all faded into memory, became just another operation. But in that war room, she'd allowed herself one small satisfaction, watching Torres realize he'd been played. Watching him understand that the quiet intelligence officer he'd dismissed was actually the hunter tracking him all along. Black Widow. The call sign fit. Not because she killed though she could, but because she spun webs. Patient, methodical, invisible until the moment she struck. And somewhere in Moscow, another web was waiting. The C-17 Globemaster's engines hummed like distant thunder as Elena stared at the classified briefing packet in her lap. Moscow. Station Chief Viktor Orlov compromised. 3 deep cover assets burned in 48 hours. Someone inside the CIA's Russia desk was bleeding information like a severed artery. And she had 6 hours to figure out who before her plane touched down in a country that would execute her on sight if they discovered who she really was. Colonel Rodriguez. Elena looked up. A man in his 50s sat across from her in the cargo bay, wearing civilian clothes, but carrying himself like military. Buzz cut, scarred knuckles, eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. "Major Davis," he said, extending a hand. "I'll be your handler for this operation." Elena shook it. His grip was firm, but not aggressive. Good sign. She'd worked with handlers who felt the need to establish dominance. Those operations never ended well. "What's the situation?" she asked. Davis pulled out a tablet, swiped through several encrypted files. Station Chief Orlov went dark 72 hours ago. Last communication was a panic code indicating immediate compromise. 3 hours later, our surveillance team photographed him being escorted into FSB headquarters in Moscow. He hasn't been seen since. "He's dead," Elena said flatly. "Probably. But before he died, someone extracted information from him. Within 24 hours, 3 of our most valuable assets were picked up. Russian businessman with access to Putin's inner circle, a colonel in the GRU, a parliamentary aide with connections to the foreign ministry. All gone. Elena studied the photographs Davis showed her. The businessman dead in what Moscow police called a car accident. The GRU colonel, found in his apartment with a single gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. The parliamentary aide simply vanished. No body, no explanation, just an empty apartment and a family asking questions no one would answer. "Someone's cleaning house," she said. "Fast and efficient, which means whoever compromised Orlov has a complete picture of our Moscow network. They know our assets, our communication protocols, our safe houses, everything." "Then why am I flying into a compromised network?" Davis's expression turned grim. "Because Washington thinks the leak isn't in Moscow. They think it's here, stateside. Someone at Langley with access to the Russia desk has been feeding information to the FSB for at least 6 months, maybe longer. Orlov's compromise was just the latest casualty." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cargo bay's temperature. "How many people have that level of access?" 12, all of them senior officers with spotless records and decades of service. "We can't investigate them openly without tipping off the mole. So we need someone to go dark, operate outside official channels and flush them out." "Someone expendable," Elena said quietly. Davis didn't flinch from the truth. "Someone capable of operating alone in hostile territory with zero backup. Someone who's done it before." He paused. "The Pentagon operation with Torres, you were in handcuffs facing a treason charge with half the U.S. military convinced you were guilty. And you still controlled that room. Admiral Chen says you're the best she's ever seen." "Admiral Chen sent you?" "She briefed the director personally, said if anyone could burn a mole inside Langley and survive Moscow doing it, it's Black Widow." Elena looked down at the briefing packet. 12 suspects. Any one of them could be the traitor. And she'd be walking into Moscow with false credentials, no official backup, and a target on her back the moment Russian intelligence realized she existed. "What's my cover?" she asked. Davis smiled slightly. It wasn't a happy expression. "Art dealer, specializing in 19th century Russian paintings. You're flying into Moscow to authenticate a recently discovered repin that a private collector wants to acquire. It's thin, but it gives you reason to be there and access to the kind of social circles where intelligence officers operate. And my real mission: make contact with our last remaining asset in Moscow, codename Nightingale. She's a secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with access to secure communications. If anyone knows how Orlov was compromised, it's her. Get the information, identify the mole, and get out. And if the Russians identify me first..." Davis met her eyes. "Then you're on your own. We'll deny knowledge of you. Your service record will disappear. As far as the U.S. government is concerned, you'll never have existed." He paused. "You know how this works, Colonel. You've done it before." Elena did know. She'd spent 6 years operating in the shadows, trading her identity for missions that couldn't be acknowledged. She'd been arrested in Damascus, interrogated in Caracas, hunted through the streets of Tehran. And every time the message from Washington was the same: "You're on your own." "When do I make contact with Nightingale?" she asked. 72 hours after you land. She'll be at the Bolshoi Theater attending a performance of Swan Lake. You'll sit in seat C-17 orchestra section. She'll be in C-19. During intermission, she'll drop her program. You'll pick it up. Inside will be a key to a dead drop location where she's left everything she knows about Orlov's compromise. What if she doesn't show? Then she's dead, and you abort. But Colonel... Davis leaned forward, voice dropping. "If Nightingale is dead, that means the mole knows we're coming. It means they've identified you. And it means you need to disappear before the FSB does. The plane hit turbulence. Elena's stomach lurched, but her expression didn't change. She'd learned a long time ago not to show fear even to allies. Especially to allies. The moment they saw weakness, they started making contingency plans that usually involved leaving you behind. "I'll need equipment," she said. Davis reached beneath his seat and pulled out a leather briefcase. "Everything you need. Encrypted phone with a one-time pad for emergency communications. 10,000 euros in cash. 3 passports under different names in case you need to run. And this." He pulled out a small device that looked like a car key fob. "Emergency beacon. You press this, we know you're in trouble. But understand, Colonel, if you press it, there's no cavalry coming. It's just a notification. We'll know you're blown, and we'll adjust operations accordingly. Meaning you'll write me off as a loss and move on. Meaning we'll make sure your sacrifice isn't wasted." Elena took the briefcase. It was heavier than it looked. "What about the mole? How do I identify them?" Davis pulled up a file on his tablet. 12 faces stared back at her. 6 men, 6 women. Ages ranging from 43 to 61. Combined service time 247 years. They'd survived the Cold War, the War on Terror, and countless black operations that would never see daylight. "Richard Vance," Davis said, pointing to the first photo. "Deputy Director of Russian Operations, 58 years old. Joined CIA in 1989, right before the Berlin Wall fell. Fluent in Russian, spent 15 years posted in Moscow under diplomatic cover. His wife is Russian, which gave him access to social circles most Americans never see." "That makes him a suspect or an asset?" Elena asked. "Both. His wife's father was a KGB colonel. Dead now, but the connection exists. Vance has always been cleared because his intel has been solid. But if someone was playing a long game, marrying into a KGB family would be one hell of a cover." Elena studied Vance's face. Weathered. Intelligent. Eyes that had seen betrayal from both sides. "Who else?" "Margaret Chen. No relation to Admiral Chen. 52 years old. Chief of Counterintelligence for the Russia desk. She's the one responsible for vetting our assets, managing communication protocols, and identifying potential security breaches." Davis paused. "If there's a mole, she's either incompetent or complicit." "Or being framed," Elena said. "Or that. But her security clearances have been flagged twice in the past year. Once for unauthorized contact with a Russian national in Vienna. Once for accessing classified files outside her operational scope." "What was her explanation?" "The Vienna contact was a friend from graduate school, now a journalist. The file access was research for a counterintelligence briefing. Both explanations checked out. But they're also exactly what a smart mole would say." Davis nodded. "Then there's James Corrigan, 61 years old, senior analyst. He's been with the agency since 1985. Survived every purge, every reorganization, every scandal. He's invisible. The kind of guy who shows up, does his job, and goes home. No one notices him. Which makes him perfect for a long-term penetration," Elena said. "Or he's just a competent analyst who's stayed below the radar for 40 years. Davis swiped through more photos. "Sarah Mitchell, 47. Deputy Chief of Station for European Operations. She rotated through Moscow twice, once in the 90s and again in 2015. Both times she developed high-value assets. Both times some of those assets were later compromised. Pattern or coincidence? That's what you need to find out." Davis showed her 4 more faces, each with their own suspicious details. Unexplained wealth. Foreign contacts. Access to classified information they shouldn't have needed. Any one of them could be the mole, or none of them. That's why we need someone on the ground, who can operate outside official channels. The plane began its descent. Elena felt the pressure change in her ears. 6 hours had passed faster than she'd realized. Below them, somewhere in the darkness, Moscow waited. 300 miles of hostile territory between her and the truth. Davis closed the briefing packet. "One more thing, Colonel. The last communication we received from Orlov before he went dark, it was a single word. Encoded, sent through a burst transmission that lasted less than 2 seconds. What was the word?" Davis hesitated. "Widow." Elena went very still. "He knew my call sign." "He shouldn't have. Your identity is compartmentalized. Only 5 people at Langley know Black Widow exists, and Orlov wasn't one of them. So either he figured it out on his own or someone told him." Davis met her eyes. "Someone who knew you were being sent to Moscow." The implications crashed through Elena's mind like falling dominoes. If Orlov knew her call sign, the mole knew it too, which meant they knew she was coming, which meant this entire operation could be a trap designed to eliminate the one person capable of exposing them. "Why didn't you tell me this before we were airborne?" she asked, voice dangerously calm. "Because if I had, you might have refused the mission. And Colonel, we're out of options. Orlov is dead or dying. Our Moscow network is burned, and someone at Langley is going to keep bleeding information until we stop them. You're the only person we trust to do this." "Trust," Elena repeated. "You just told me the mole knows I'm coming, which means one of the 5 people who knows my identity is dirty, and you expect me to trust anyone." "I expect you to do your job," Davis said, and there was steel in his voice now. "You volunteered for this life, Colonel. You knew what it meant. No recognition, no backup, no guarantee you'll survive. But you do it anyway because someone has to. Because if people like you don't stand in the gap, people like Orlov die. And the networks we've spent decades building collapse, and American interests get sold to the highest bidder." Elena stared at him. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at the unfairness of being sent into a trap. But Davis was right. She had volunteered. She'd known the cost. And somewhere in Moscow, Nightingale was waiting, probably terrified, wondering if help was coming, or if she'd be the next body found in an alley with a bullet in her head. "When we land, you're on your own," Davis said. "Your legend is solid, but it won't hold up under serious scrutiny. You have 72 hours to make contact with Nightingale, get the intelligence, and identify the mole. After that, you need to be out of Russia. We'll have an exfiltration team waiting at the Estonian border, but you need to get there yourself. And if I can't, then you disappear. New identity, new life, and you never contact anyone from your old one ever again. Not family, not friends, no one. You become a ghost." The plane's wheels touched down with a jolt that rattled Elena's teeth. They were taxiing now, moving through the darkness toward a private hangar where customs wouldn't ask questions and security cameras had been conveniently disabled. Davis stood briefcase in hand. "Your documents are in order. Your hotel reservation is confirmed. You have a meeting scheduled with Dmitry Volkov tomorrow afternoon. He's the collector who supposedly wants the Repin authenticated. He's legitimate, by the way. We actually arranged a real painting so your cover would hold up." "Thorough," Elena said. "We're sending you into hell, Colonel. The least we can do is make sure your cover story doesn't fall apart in the first 5 minutes." Davis moved toward the cargo bay door. "One last thing. If this goes bad, if you get caught, don't try to be a hero. The Russians are very good at extracting information. Give them enough to make them think they've broken you, but nothing that will burn operations that can still be saved. You're telling me to cooperate with torture. I'm telling you to survive. Dead heroes don't expose moles. They just become cautionary tales we tell new recruits." The cargo door opened, letting in a blast of cold Moscow air. "Good luck, Colonel. I hope the next time I see you it's at a debriefing in Virginia." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness, like he'd never existed. Elena sat alone in the cargo bay for a long moment, listening to the engines wind down. Through the open door, she could see the Moscow skyline in the distance. Millions of lights, millions of people. And somewhere in that city, someone knew she was coming. Someone who'd already killed 3 assets and compromised a station chief. Someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain by making sure Elena Rodriguez never left Russia alive. She stood, grabbed the briefcase, and walked down the ramp into the Moscow night. The cold hit her like a physical blow. February in Russia wasn't like February in Virginia. This cold had teeth. It bit through her coat and found every gap in her clothing. Her breath came out in white clouds that dissipated almost instantly. A black sedan waited 50 feet away, engine running. The driver was a woman in her 30s, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She didn't get out to open the door, didn't smile. Just sat there watching Elena approach with the kind of professional disinterest that marked her as ex-military. Elena opened the back door and slid inside. The interior was warm, almost stifling after the cold outside. "Documents," the driver said in Russian. Elena handed over her passport. The driver examined it under a small LED light, checking the photo against Elena's face, checking the stamps, checking the quality of the paper and the printing. "You're American," the driver said, switching to English with a thick accent. "I am," Elena replied, in fluent Russian, "but I speak your language." The driver's eyebrow raised slightly. "Good. Makes my job easier." She handed back the passport. "I'm Anna. I'll be your transportation while you're in Moscow. Hotel Metropole, yes?" "Yes." Anna pulled out of the hangar, navigating through a series of access roads that bypassed the main terminal. Smart. No cameras, no security checkpoints, no record that Elena Rodriguez had ever landed in Moscow. "First time in Russia?" Anna asked. "No, I was here in 2018. Moscow and St. Petersburg. Tourist, business. I authenticated a collection of imperial-era portraits for a private collector." Anna nodded, and Elena knew she was being tested. The driver was probably FSB, or at least FSB adjacent. They'd want to know if her cover story held up under casual questioning. "What brings you back?" Anna asked. "A Repin. Supposedly authentic, but the provenance is questionable. The collector wants confirmation before he spends 8 million euros. 8 million for a painting?" Anna shook her head. "Rich people. Rich people keep me employed," Elena said with a slight smile. They drove in silence for several minutes, moving through Moscow's outskirts toward the city center. Elena watched the buildings pass, noting security cameras, police checkpoints, anything that might be relevant if she needed to run. "You should be careful," Anna said suddenly. Elena's attention snapped back to the driver. "Careful of what? Moscow is not like America. People disappear here, especially foreigners asking questions they shouldn't ask." Anna's eyes met Elena's in the rearview mirror. "I'm just a driver. I see things, hear things, and lately I've been driving a lot of people who don't come back." Elena's hand moved imperceptibly toward the knife hidden in her coat lining. "What kind of people? Americans? Europeans? Always the same story business trip, authenticate this, verify that. They check into their hotels. I drive them to their meetings. And then—" Anna snapped her fingers. "Gone. No checkout. No flight home. Just empty hotel rooms and questions no one wants to answer." "How many?" Elena asked quietly. 3 in the past 2 months. Maybe more. I only drive for one service. There are others." Anna pulled onto the main highway leading into central Moscow. "I'm telling you this because you seem smart. Smarter than the others. So maybe you'll be smart enough to do your job and leave before—" She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Elena sat back, mind racing. 3 disappeared Americans in 2 months. That matched the timeline of the compromised assets, which meant Anna wasn't just a driver, she was a warning. Whether that warning came from a concerned civilian or from Russian intelligence trying to rattle her, Elena couldn't tell yet. "Thank you for the advice," Elena said carefully. "I'll be careful." "Good." Anna's expression softened slightly. "My daughter is your age. I'd want someone to warn her if she was walking into danger." They drove the rest of the way in silence. The Moscow skyline grew closer, dominated by the Gothic spires of Stalin-era architecture and the modern glass towers of new money. The Hotel Metropole appeared ahead, its Art Nouveau facade lit up against the night sky. Anna pulled up to the entrance. "Your hotel. Checkout is noon, but if you need to leave earlier, call the number on my card. I'll come get you, no questions asked." Elena took the card. "Why are you helping me?" Anna looked at her, and for just a moment her professional mask slipped. "Because 3 people didn't make it home, and I'm tired of driving ghosts." She paused. "Be careful, Miss Rodriguez. Moscow has teeth." Elena got out, briefcase in hand. She walked through the hotel's ornate entrance, past doormen in imperial-style uniforms, into a lobby that looked like it had been frozen in time since the Romanovs fell. The front desk clerk spoke perfect English, processed her documents without question, and handed her a key card to room 437. "We hope you enjoy your stay in Moscow, Miss Rodriguez." Elena took the elevator up, hyper-aware of the security cameras in every corner. In her room, she did a quick sweep for listening devices. Found 3 standard for a Moscow hotel. They'd be monitored by FSB, analyzing every conversation, every phone call, looking for anything suspicious. She left them in place. Removing them would only draw attention. Instead, she unpacked her single suitcase, hung up her clothes, and set up her laptop exactly like an art authenticator would. She pulled up files on Repin, made notes in a journal about brushwork techniques and pigment analysis, created the appearance of someone preparing for a legitimate business meeting. But her mind was elsewhere. On Orlov, dying in an FSB interrogation room. On Nightingale, waiting at the Bolshoi, with intelligence that could burn a traitor. On Anna's warning about Americans who disappeared. And on the word Orlov had sent before he died widow. Someone knew she was coming. Someone had told him, which meant one of 5 people at Langley was dirty. And that person was going to do everything in their power to make sure Elena never left Moscow alive. She walked to the window and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there in one of those millions of lights, Nightingale was waiting. Somewhere out there, a mole was watching. And somewhere out there, Elena's next move would determine whether she exposed a traitor or became just another American who disappeared without a trace. She checked her watch. 70 hours until the Bolshoi. 70 hours to prepare. 70 hours to survive. The game had begun. And Black Widow never lost. Elena's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m., pulling her from a sleep that had been more tactical rest than actual recovery. The message was simple, encrypted through 3 layers of security that would dissolve the moment she read it. Volkov meeting moved up, 10 a.m., same location. She deleted it and watched the message eat itself, leaving no trace it had ever existed. 3 hours. Someone was testing her, seeing if she could adapt to a compressed timeline. Or someone was trying to throw her off balance before she'd even had coffee. She showered fast, dressed in the kind of clothes an art authenticator would wear, expensive, but not flashy professional, but approachable. Black slacks, cream blouse-tailored jacket. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. The goal was to be forgettable, the kind of woman who could walk through a crowd and leave no impression. The hotel restaurant was half full when she arrived. Business travelers mostly speaking German and English and Arabic. Elena ordered coffee and a pastry she wouldn't eat, taking a corner table where she could watch the entrance. That's when she saw him. Mid-50s gray hair, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. He was reading Kommersant, the Russian business daily, but his eyes kept flicking up to scan the room. When they landed on Elena, they lingered for just a fraction too long before returning to his newspaper. FSB. Had to be. They'd be watching any American who arrived in Moscow, especially one with her timing. The question was whether this was routine surveillance or something more targeted. Elena sipped her coffee and pulled out her phone, scrolling through emails about 19th century Russian painters like she didn't have a care in the world. But her peripheral vision tracked every movement the man made. The way his hand drifted toward his jacket pocket when a hotel employee walked past. The way he shifted his weight when the elevator doors opened. Professional tells. The kind you only learned through years of field work. Her phone buzzed again. This time a text from a Moscow number she didn't recognize. Your car is waiting outside. Elena paid her bill and walked through the lobby, acutely aware of the man folding his newspaper and standing up 30 seconds after she did. In the reflection of the glass doors, she watched him follow at a distance that was professional, but not subtle. The black sedan from last night was parked at the curb, Anna behind the wheel. Elena slid into the back seat. You're being followed, Anna said, without preamble. I know. Gray suit, expensive watch, reading Kommersant. Anna's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. FSB. They've been watching the hotel since you arrived. Not just you, all the foreigners, but they're paying special attention to Americans. How do you know? Because they requisitioned 3 surveillance teams yesterday. Usually they only use 1. Something has them nervous. Anna pulled into traffic, taking a route that wound through side streets instead of the main boulevards. The man following you, his name is Alexei Petrov. He's FSB counterintelligence, the kind who doesn't waste time on routine surveillance. Elena watched Moscow slide past the windows. You know a lot for a driver. I told you, I see things, hear things. Anna made a sharp turn down an alley that barely fit the sedan. And right now I'm hearing that the FSB is looking for someone, an American operative. They don't know who don't know what they look like, but they know someone's coming. Elena's blood went cold. How would they know that? Good question. One you should probably answer before you meet with Volkov. Anna's eyes met hers in the mirror. Because if the FSB knows an American operative is in Moscow, and you're an American meeting with a collector who has ties to Russian intelligence, what do you think they're going to assume? The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Volkov wasn't just a collector. He was bait. And Elena had walked right into a trap designed to flush out exactly the kind of operative she was. Take me to the Estonian border, Elena said. What? You said you'd drive me anywhere, no questions. I'm asking. Take me to... I can't. Anna's voice was tight. There are checkpoints. FSB military border patrol. They'll search the car. Search you. And if they find anything fake passports, encrypted phones, anything, we're both dead. Elena's mind raced through options. She couldn't abort the mission not without the intelligence from Nightingale. But if the FSB knew an operative was in Moscow, they'd be watching the Bolshoi. They'd be watching Nightingale. And the moment Elena made contact, they'd close the trap. The meeting with Volkov, Elena said. Where is it? Tretyakov Gallery, private viewing room. You'll have 30 minutes to authenticate the painting before Volkov arrives to hear your assessment. And the painting itself, legitimate as far as I know. Rapin's Portrait of Maria Tenisheva, 1898. Disappeared during the Soviet era, resurfaced last year in a private estate in Yekaterinburg. If it's authentic, it's worth 10 million euros, maybe more. Elena thought fast. A legitimate painting meant Volkov's interest was real. But that didn't mean he wasn't working with the FSB. In Russia, businessmen with that kind of money didn't stay in business without cooperation with intelligence services. Anna, I need you to tell me the truth. Are you FSB? The driver's hands tightened on the wheel. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then, quietly, my husband was. Major Dmitry Voloshin, Foreign Intelligence. He died 3 years ago in Syria. Officially, it was a helicopter crash. Unofficially, someone sold him out, gave his location to rebels who shot down his transport with American missiles. Her voice cracked slightly. So no, I'm not FSB. But I know how they work. I know what they do to people who get in their way, and I know what happens to assets who get burned. I'm sorry, Elena said, and meant it. Don't be sorry, just be smart. Because whoever sold out Orlov, whoever's burning American assets, they're working with someone on your side, someone who benefits every time an operative disappears. Anna pulled up to the Tretyakov Gallery, a sprawling complex of white buildings and manicured grounds. You have 2 hours before Volkov arrives. Use them wisely. Elena got out, briefcase in hand. The gallery was already open, tourists and art students flowing through the entrance. She showed her credentials to security documentation that identified her as Dr. Sarah Mitchell, independent art authenticator specializing in Imperial Russian portraiture. The name was calculated. If there was a mole at Langley, using the real Sarah Mitchell's name might draw them out. Security waved her through without incident. A young woman in a gallery uniform met her at the information desk. Dr. Mitchell, I'm Irina. Mr. Volkov has arranged a private viewing room for your work. Please follow me. They walked through galleries filled with Russian masters. Repin, Surikov, Serov. Works that had survived Revolution War and Soviet censorship. Elena barely registered them. Her mind was calculating angles, assessing threats, planning contingencies. The private viewing room was small, windowless, with professional lighting and a single table where the painting waited under protective cloth. Irina gestured toward it. You have until noon. There are tools in the cabinet if you need them: magnifying glass, UV light, pigment samples for comparison. If you need anything else, press the call button. Then she was gone, door closing with a soft click that somehow sounded like a prison cell locking. Elena stood alone with the painting. She removed the cloth, carefully revealing the portrait beneath. It was breathtaking. A woman in her 30s, dark hair and intelligent eyes, wearing a dress from the turn of the century. The brushwork was exquisite, the kind of technical mastery that separated masters from mere craftsmen. If it was a forgery, it was one of the best Elena had ever seen. She pulled out her tools, began the authentication process, examined the canvas weave under magnification, tested the pigments with chemical reagents, used UV light to check for repairs or overpainting. Every test she ran confirmed what her instincts had told her: this was authentic. A genuine Repin worth every euro Volkov was considering paying. But that wasn't why she was here. Elena pulled out her encrypted phone, the one Davis had given her on the plane. Checked for messages. Nothing. But the metadata told her something interesting: 3 attempts to access the phone's GPS in the past hour. Someone was trying to track her location. She powered it down, removed the battery, and placed both in a Faraday bag that would block all signals. Then she pulled out the hotel room keycard from her pocket and examined it under the UV light. There, invisible to the naked eye, a second magnetic strip professionally installed. Someone had modified her keycard, probably while she was at breakfast. which meant someone had been in her room. Which meant they knew about the encrypted phone, the fake passports, everything in her briefcase. The trap was closing faster than she'd anticipated. Elena's hands moved with practiced efficiency. She pulled apart the frame of her reading glasses, extracted a micro SD card hidden in the arm, and inserted it into her phone. The card contained protocols for emergency extraction contacts for assets she could trust, and most importantly, a list of every CIA officer with access to the Russia desk. 12 names. 12 faces she'd memorized on the plane. But now there were only 11. James Corrigan had died 4 hours ago. Heart attack at his desk in Langley. 61 years old, apparently healthy, suddenly dead. The message had come through on the secure network flagged as urgent, but not suspicious. Except Elena knew heart attacks could be induced. The right toxin delivered through skin contact or aerosol could stop a heart in minutes and leave minimal trace evidence. The Russians had perfected the technique. So had the Americans. Corrigan dead meant one less suspect, or it meant the mole was cleaning house, eliminating anyone who might expose them. The door opened. Elena's hand moved toward her concealed knife, but it was just Irina returning with tea. "Mr. Volkov wanted me to make sure you were comfortable," she said, setting down a tray. "He's very anxious to hear your assessment." "Tell Mr. Volkov the painting is authentic," Elena said. "He's getting a bargain at $8 million. Irina smiled. "He'll be pleased. He's been searching for this piece for 5 years." She paused at the door. "Dr. Mitchell, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Have you ever been to Moscow before? Your Russian is very good. Better than most Americans." Elena's pulse quickened, but her expression remained pleasant. "I studied at Moscow State University for a semester in graduate school. Fell in love with the language and the art." "Which year?" It was a test. Had to be. Irina was verifying details of her cover story, checking for inconsistencies. 2009, Elena said smoothly. "I was there when they reopened the Pushkin Museum after renovations. Incredible experience." Irina nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Enjoy your tea, Dr. Mitchell." The door closed again. Elena waited 30 seconds, then poured the tea down the sink in the corner washroom. She wasn't paranoid enough to think everything in Moscow was poisoned, but she was smart enough not to take unnecessary risks. Her phone buzzed, the regular phone, not the encrypted one. A text from an unknown number. "Nightingale compromised. Abort contact. Exfil team waiting at backup location. You have 4 hours." Elena stared at the message. If Nightingale was compromised, the entire mission was blown. But the message itself was suspicious. How would anyone know Nightingale was burned unless they were the ones who burned her? She pulled up the metadata on the text. It had been routed through 4 proxy servers, originated from a location inside the United States, and used encryption protocols that matched CIA standard operating procedure. But there was something wrong with the timing. The message had been sent 6 minutes ago, but it had taken 3 minutes to reach her phone. Someone had delayed it. Someone wanted her to sit in this room second-guessing herself while they moved pieces into position. Elena made a decision. She powered up the encrypted phone battery and sent a single burst transmission. "Nightingale status confirmation required. All other comms potentially compromised." The response came back in 14 seconds. "Nightingale active. Contact timeline unchanged. Source of abort message unknown." Which meant someone was trying to pull her off the mission. Someone who knew about Nightingale, knew about the Bolshoi meeting, knew enough operational detail to craft a convincing abort order. Someone at Langley. Elena's mind went through the remaining suspects. Richard Vance, whose wife was Russian. Margaret Chen, whose security clearances had been flagged. Sarah Mitchell, whose name Elena was currently using. 8 others each with means, motive, and opportunity. But only one of them had sent that abort message. Only one of them was desperate enough to risk exposing themselves by trying to call off the operation. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't Irina. Dmitry Volkov was shorter than Elena expected, maybe 5'7", with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a custom suit and handmade shoes, but he moved like a man who'd learned violence before he'd learned business. "Dr. Mitchell," he said in English with barely an accent. "I hope my painting hasn't disappointed you." "It's magnificent," Elena said, extending her hand. "Authenticated provenance, original frame, no restoration work beyond minor cleaning. You have a museum-quality piece." Volkov shook her hand. His grip was firm, controlled. "I'm pleased. I've been pursuing this work for a very long time." He moved to the painting, studying it with genuine appreciation. "My grandmother knew Maria Tenisheva. Used to tell me stories about the salons she hosted, the artists she supported. When I heard this portrait had resurfaced, I had to have it." "A family connection makes it even more valuable," Elena said carefully. "Yes, family is everything, don't you think?" Volkov turned to face her. "Which is why I was so interested to learn that you're traveling under a borrowed name." Elena's blood froze, but her expression didn't change. "I'm sorry. Dr. Sarah Mitchell is currently in Langley, Virginia, attending a conference on counterintelligence operations. I know this because I had my people check after your credentials were submitted." Volkov's voice was pleasant, almost conversational. "So either you're an imposter using her name, or you're Dr. Mitchell, and someone at the CIA is helping you maintain cover by placing her somewhere else. Either way, you're not who you claim to be." Elena's hand moved toward her knife, but Volkov raised his palm. "Please, I'm not FSB. I'm not working with them. I'm a businessman who survives by knowing who he's dealing with." He pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. It was Station Chief Orlov, taken 3 days ago, being escorted into FSB headquarters. "Victor was my friend. We grew up together in Leningrad before it became St. Petersburg again. When I heard he'd been compromised, I asked questions, made inquiries, and I learned something interesting." "What's that?" "The information that burned Victor came from America. Someone at Langley gave the FSB everything, his assets, his protocols, his safe houses, everything." Volkov's expression hardened. "And I think you're here to find out who." Elena weighed her options. She could deny everything, maintain cover, and hope Volkov was bluffing. Or she could take a calculated risk and trust a man who claimed to be Orlov's friend. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because Victor was going to be my daughter's godfather. Because his death isn't just a loss to American intelligence, it's personal. And because whoever sold him out is going to keep killing until someone stops them." Volkov moved closer, voice dropping. "You're Black Widow. Aren't you Victor? Sent one word before he died. He was trying to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "That the mole knows you're coming. They've known since before you landed. The FSB surveillance, the compressed timeline for our meeting, the abort message you received 20 minutes ago, it's all designed to flush you out or force you to run." Volkov paused. "And if you run, Nightingale dies. They're using her as bait to draw you to the Bolshoi, where they'll be waiting." Elena's mind raced. "How do you know all this?" "Because I still have friends in Russian intelligence, friends who owe me favors, friends who are disturbed by what's happening. The FSB didn't burn Victor on their own, they had help, American help. And that help is still active, still feeding information, still killing your people." "Give me a name," Elena said. Volkov shook his head. "I don't have one, but I know where you can get it. There's a man named Sergei Volkov, no relation, who worked as a translator for FSB counterintelligence. He was present during Victor's interrogation. He heard things, saw things, and 3 days ago he disappeared. Not arrested, not killed, just vanished. Where is he? Hiding. But he's willing to talk. Willing to tell you everything he knows about who gave up Victor. Volkov pulled out a piece of paper, wrote an address. This is a safe house in the Arbat district. Sergei will be there tonight at 8 p.m. He'll only stay for 30 minutes. If you want answers, that's your chance. Elena took the paper. Why are you helping me? Because Victor was my friend. Because my daughter will grow up without a godfather. And because someone needs to burn the people who did this. Volkov's eyes were hard. You want the mole at Langley get to Sergei. He knows who they are. But Colonel Rodriguez, if you go to that safe house, you need to understand something. The FSB will be watching. The mole will be watching. And Nightingale is already compromised. You make contact with her at the Bolshoi, you're walking into a kill box. Then I won't go to the Bolshoi, Elena said. You have to. Because Nightingale has information you need not about the mole, but about what the mole has sold. Operational details, asset lists, protocols, everything the Russians need to dismantle American intelligence in Eastern Europe. If you don't get that information, hundreds of people die. Elena felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down. Save Nightingale or expose the mole. Get the intelligence or survive. Every option led to body counts and burned operations. There's a third option, Volkov said quietly. You go to the Bolshoi. You make contact with Nightingale. And you let the FSB see you do it. You let them think they've caught Black Widow. And while they're focused on you, Sergei gets the real intelligence to people who can act on it. You're asking me to sacrifice myself. I'm asking you to do what Victor would have done. What any of your burned assets would have done if given the choice. Volkov moved toward the door. The safe house address is accurate. Sergei will be there at 8, but he'll only wait 30 minutes. After that, he disappears forever, and you lose your only chance to identify the mole. And Nightingale will be at the Bolshoi tomorrow night, same as planned. If you don't make contact, she'll assume you're dead or captured. She'll try to exfiltrate on her own, and the FSB will kill her within 24 hours. Volkov paused at the door. Your choice, Colonel. Save yourself, or save the mission. I don't envy you. Then he was gone, leaving Elena alone with a painting worth 10 million euros and a decision that would determine whether she lived or died. She looked at the address Volkov had given her. Arbat, District 8 p.m. 4 hours from now. Then she looked at the photo of Orlov being escorted into FSB headquarters. A man who'd died trying to protect his assets, trying to send a warning that might save the operative coming to avenge him. Elena pulled out her encrypted phone and composed a message to Davis. Orlov's last transmission was correct. Mole is active. Nightingale compromised but extractable. Require immediate authorization for direct action. The response came back in 90 seconds. No authorization granted. Abort mission and exfiltrate. Backup team en route to Estonian border. Elena read it twice, analyzing the phrasing, the timing, the desperation behind the order. Then she deleted it. Because whoever sent that message wasn't trying to save her. They were trying to stop her from getting to Sergei. They were trying to stop her from exposing the mole. Which meant the mole wasn't just at Langley anymore. The mole was Davis. Elena stood in the empty viewing room staring at the encrypted phone in her hand. Davis. The handler who'd briefed her on the plane. The man who'd looked her in the eye and told her she was on her own. The man who'd known her call sign when only 5 people at Langley should have had that information. She replayed every conversation they'd had looking for the tells she'd missed. The way he'd pushed the Moscow mission despite knowing Orlov had sent her call sign before he died. The way he'd emphasized that she was expendable, that no backup was coming. The way he'd given her an emergency beacon that wouldn't summon help, just notify someone that she was compromised. Notify him, so he could tell the FSB exactly where to find her. Elena's hands moved fast, now muscle memory taking over. She pulled apart the emergency beacon Davis had given her, examining the circuitry. There, a secondary transmitter broadcasting on a frequency that had nothing to do with CIA protocols. It was sending her location to someone, and it wasn't Langley. She crushed it under her heel, ground the pieces into plastic dust, and swept them into the trash. Then she pulled out the 3 passports Davis had provided. Canadian, British, German. All flawless, all with entry stamps that would pass inspection. All probably flagged in FSB databases the moment she tried to use them. Elena dropped them in the sink and set them on fire with the lighter she'd taken from her hotel room. Watched the flames eat through the pages, destroying the trap Davis had so carefully built. She was truly alone now. No backup, no extraction team, no cover identities that weren't compromised, just her training her instincts, and 4 hours until Sergei Volkov would give her the name of the person who'd gotten Orlov killed. The person who'd sent her here to die. Elena checked her watch. 3:40 p.m. The Arbat safe house was across the city, 40 minutes by car if traffic was light. But taking Anna's sedan would put the driver at risk, and Elena had already cost too many people their lives. She'd go alone. On foot, if necessary. Blend into the crowd, become invisible, the way she'd done in Damascus and Caracas and Tehran. But first, she needed to know if Davis was working alone or if he had help. Elena pulled up the list of 12 suspects on her phone. 11 now, with Corrigan dead. She studied each face, each biography, looking for connections to Davis that hadn't been obvious before. Richard Vance, Deputy Director of Russian Operations. He would have authorized Davis for the Moscow mission, would have known about Orlov's final transmission, would have had the authority to modify her cover documents. Margaret Chen, Chief of Counterintelligence. She would have vetted the operation, approved the protocols, ensured security. Would have had access to every detail of Elena's insertion. Sarah Mitchell, Deputy Chief of Station, the woman whose name Elena was currently using. If Mitchell was the mole using her identity, would have been a way to draw her out, or it would have been Davis's way of eliminating a threat. Elena's encrypted phone buzzed. Another message, this one from a number she didn't recognize. Black Widow, Nightingale requests emergency contact. Bolshoi tonight, 7 p.m. Seat C-17. Urgent. Lives at stake. The timeline had moved up. Instead of tomorrow night, they wanted her at the Bolshoi in 3 hours, which meant either Nightingale was in immediate danger or someone was trying to prevent her from getting to Sergei. Elena composed a response. Confirm Nightingale authentication code. The reply came back instantly. November, India, Golf, Hotel, Tango. Night. The first letters spelled out part of Nightingale's code name. It was correct. But any mole with access to the Russia desk would know that authentication code. It proved nothing. Elena needed to make a choice. Sergei at 8 p.m. with potential intelligence on the mole, or Nightingale at 7 p.m. with operational data that could save hundreds of assets. She couldn't do both. The safe house and the Bolshoi were on opposite sides of Moscow, 30 minutes apart, even with clear traffic. She could split the difference, arrive at the Bolshoi early, make quick contact with Nightingale, and race to the safe house. But that meant rushing both meetings, increasing the chance of mistakes. And in Moscow, mistakes got you killed. Or she could trust her instincts. Elena closed her eyes, pushed away the fear and the pressure and the weight of impossible choices. Let her training take over. She'd spent 6 years learning to read people, to identify deception, to see the patterns others missed. Davis had been too insistent about the Moscow mission, too eager to send her into danger, too quick with the abort orders when she got close to the truth. And the emergency contact from Nightingale 7 p.m. instead of tomorrow night that was Davis trying to control her movements, trying to put her in the specific place at a specific time where the FSB would be waiting. Elena opened her eyes and made her decision. She would go to Sergei, get the name of the mole. Then if she survived, she'd extract Nightingale herself. But first, she needed to disappear. Elena gathered her belongings, left the authentication report for the Repin on the table, and walked out of the gallery like she had nothing more important to do than catch a cab. Security barely glanced at her. Why would they Dr. Sarah Mitchell was a legitimate art authenticator who'd done legitimate work? Nothing suspicious about her at all. Outside, the Moscow afternoon was cold and gray. Elena hailed a taxi, gave the driver an address 3 blocks from the Arbat safe house, and settled in for the ride. She kept her face turned toward the window, watching the city slide past, looking for surveillance. She spotted 2 cars, a gray sedan that had been parked outside the gallery, a black SUV that picked them up 4 blocks later, both maintaining distance, both professional. FSB or Davis's people, it didn't matter. They were there. Elena waited until they hit a traffic light, then opened her door and stepped out. "Hey!" the driver shouted. "You didn't pay!" Elena threw 2,000 rubles through the window and walked fast into a shopping center. The crowds swallowed her immediately. Tourists and locals, teenagers and babushkas, everyone moving with purpose. She grabbed a headscarf from a vendor, wrapped it around her hair, and bought a thick winter coat that changed her silhouette. Then she walked out a different exit, caught a bus heading toward the city center, and got off 3 stops later. The gray sedan was gone. So was the SUV. But Elena knew better than to relax. If they were good, and they were, they'd have multiple teams. Losing 2 cars meant nothing if there were 6 more in rotation. She ducked into a metro station, bought a ticket with cash, and took the red line toward Arbat. The train was packed, bodies pressed together, everyone avoiding eye contact in that particularly Russian way. Elena kept her head down, just another commuter heading home from work. At Arbatskaya station, she exited with the crowd, let them carry her up the escalators and into the street. The Arbat district was old Moscow narrow streets and 19th century buildings, the kind of place where tourists bought matryoshka dolls and locals actually lived. The safe house was on a side street, 3rd floor, of a building that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the Brezhnev era. Elena circled the block twice, looking for watchers. Found none, but that meant nothing. A good surveillance team could hide anywhere. She entered through the rear entrance, climbed 3 flights of stairs that smelled like cabbage and old concrete, and knocked on apartment 3C, with a pattern Volkov had specified: 3 quick, 2 slow, 1 quick. The door opened immediately. Sergei Volkov was younger than Elena expected, maybe 35, with the kind of face that looked permanently worried. He pulled her inside, fast-locked 3 separate deadbolts, and pressed his back against the door like he expected it to burst open any second. "You're late," he said in Russian. Elena checked her watch. 7:58. "I'm 2 minutes early." "In Moscow, 2 minutes might as well be 2 hours. Come, we don't have time." He moved deeper into the apartment, which was sparse to the point of being barren. 1 table, 2 chairs, a single lamp. No decorations, no personal items, nothing that suggested anyone actually lived here. "Dmitry Volkov said you were at Orlov's interrogation," Elena said. "I was. 3 days of hell. They broke him on the 2nd day, but they kept going because they enjoyed it." Sergei's hands were shaking. I translated. Every scream, every confession, every name he gave them. They made me write it all down. What did he tell them? Everything. Asset names, communication protocols, dead drop locations. He tried to resist, but they used drugs. Sodium pentothal and something else. Something new. Made him talk whether he wanted to or not. Sergei pulled out a laptop, old and battered, but functional. But before he broke, he said something. Just once. The FSB didn't understand what it meant, but I did. What did he say? He said, "The widow is walking into fire. Tell her the handler is poison." Sergei opened a file on the laptop. I didn't know what it meant until Dmitri told me about you. About Black Widow. About the CIA sending someone to find the mole. Elena's chest tightened. Orlov knew Davis was dirty. Not at first. But during the interrogation, they showed him communication logs, encrypted messages between FSB counterintelligence and an American source. The source used the identifier Shepard. Does that mean anything to you? It did. Elena had seen that name before, buried in classified reports about compromised operations. Shepard was the code name for a high-level penetration of U.S. intelligence that the CIA had been hunting for 8 years. An asset so well placed, so carefully protected that every attempt to expose them had failed. Shepard is at Langley, Elena said quietly. Shepard is your handler, the man who sent you to Moscow. Sergei pulled up a document, a communication log with timestamps and encryption keys. Look, this message was sent 4 hours before you landed. Black Widow deploying Moscow. Timeline accelerated. Prepare reception. It's from Shepard. From Davis. He told the FSB you were coming. Elena stared at the screen, rage and betrayal warring in her chest. Davis had sent her into a trap. Had watched her board that plane knowing the FSB would be waiting. Had given her compromised documents and a tracking beacon and instructions designed to get her killed. There's more, Sergei said. Orlov didn't just give up your operation. He gave up something else, something bigger. He pulled up another file, this one marked with FSB classification stamps. The mole Shepard, he didn't just burn your Moscow network. He sold a list. Codename Prometheus. It's every deep-cover CIA operative in Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. 247 names. Officers who've spent years, sometimes decades, building their covers. And in 72 hours, the FSB is going to roll them all up simultaneously. Elena felt like she'd been punched in the chest. 247 officers. Most of them had families, lives, people who'd never know what happened to them. They'd just disappear one by one, until American intelligence in half the world went dark. When did Davis sell the list? She asked. 6 days ago. Payment was $30 million transferred through cryptocurrency to an account in the Cayman Islands. The FSB is waiting to make the arrests until they've verified all the names, which gives you... Sergei checked his watch. 68 hours to stop it. How do I stop it? You can't, not alone. You need to get this information to people at Langley who aren't compromised. People who can lock down the list, warn the officers, evacuate them before the FSB moves. Sergei ejected a thumb drive from his laptop. Everything is on here. Communication logs, bank records, the Prometheus list with all 247 names. Enough evidence to burn Davis and everyone working with him. Elena took the thumb drive. It was small plastic, ordinary. It felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Is Davis working alone? No. He has at least 2 accomplices at Langley. I don't have their names, but they're referenced in the communications. Codenames Cardinal and Bishop. Both have high-level access. Both have been feeding information to Shepard for at least 3 years. 3 moles. Not one. And they'd been active for years, systematically destroying American intelligence while hiding behind spotless records and decades of trusted service. There's one more thing, Sergei said quietly. Nightingale, your asset at the ministry. She's not compromised. Elena's head snapped up. What? The FSB doesn't know about her. They never did. But Davis does. And at 7 p.m. tonight he's sending a team to the Bolshoi to arrest her. Not FSB, his people. Private contractors working for Russian intelligence. They're going to kill her and make it look like FSB caught her. Another burned asset. Another failure for the CIA. Elena checked her watch. 8:17. She'd missed the meeting at the Bolshoi. Nightingale had been sitting there alone waiting for contact that never came, and now Davis's people were moving in. Where are they taking her? Elena demanded. I don't know, but I know they won't kill her at the theater. Too public. They'll wait until she leaves, follow her home, and take her there. She lives in an apartment complex near Novoslobodskaya, 5th floor apartment 512. Elena was already moving toward the door. How long do I have? The ballet ends at 9:30. She'll be home by 10, maybe 10:15 if she stops for groceries. Sergei grabbed her arm. Colonel, you can't save everyone. If you go after Nightingale, you might not make it out of Russia. The smart play is to take this information and run. The smart play got 12 operators killed in Syria, Elena said. I'm done being smart. She opened the door, then paused. Sergei, you need to disappear. Really disappear. If Davis knows I met with you, he already knows. I burned my last bridge coming here, but Dmitri has a boat waiting at the Black Sea. If I can get to Sochi, I can get out. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Maybe I'll see America someday. I hear it's nice. It is, Elena said. Thank you for this. You just saved a lot of lives. I hope so, because Victor was a good man. He deserved better than what they did to him. Elena stepped into the hallway, and Sergei closed the door behind her. She heard the deadbolts slide home, heard his footsteps retreating deeper into the apartment. Then she ran. Down 3 flights of stairs, out into the Moscow night, past tourists taking photos of the illuminated buildings. She checked her watch as she moved. 8:25. She had 90 minutes to get across the city, find Nightingale's apartment, and stop Davis's contractors from killing the only asset who could corroborate the intelligence Sergei had given her. Elena flagged down a taxi, gave the driver the address near Novoslobodskaya, and told him there was an extra 1,000 rubles if he got her there in 20 minutes. The driver grinned and hit the accelerator. Moscow blurred past the windows. Elena used the time to check the thumb drive, confirming the files were intact. Communication logs between Shepard and FSB. Bank transfers totaling $30 million, and the Prometheus list, 247 names, ranks current assignments and cover identities. She recognized some of them. Officers she'd worked with, trained with trusted. People who'd dedicated their lives to serving in the shadows. And in 68 hours they'd all be dead, unless she could get this information to someone at Langley who wasn't compromised. But who could she trust? Davis was Shepard. 2 others were Cardinal and Bishop. That meant 3 out of 5 people who knew about Black Widow were dirty, which left 2 possibilities: Admiral Chen, who'd created the Black Widow program, or Director Morrison, who'd authorized Elena's deployment to Moscow. Elena pulled out her phone, the regular one, not the compromised, encrypted device Davis had given her. She composed a message to a secure email address that bypassed normal CIA channels. Shepard identified. Davis. Cardinal and Bishop active. Prometheus list compromised. 247 officers at risk. Require immediate secure contact. Black Widow. She sent it, then powered down the phone and removed the battery. If Davis was monitoring communications, he'd see that message within minutes. and he'd know she'd survived long enough to blow his entire operation. The taxi screeched to a stop outside a Soviet-era apartment complex, all concrete and efficiency. Elena paid the driver, added the promised bonus, and watched him speed away. The building was quiet, lights on in maybe half the apartments. Elena checked the directory. Apartment 512, 5th floor. N. Sokolova. Nightingale's real name was Natasha Sokolova, a 43-year-old secretary who'd been passing information to the CIA for 6 years because her husband had died in Chechnya, and she blamed Putin's government for his death. Elena took the stairs instead of the elevator, moving fast, but quiet. At the 5th floor, she paused, listening. Voices from inside one apartment, television sounds from another, but the hallway was empty. Apartment 512 was at the end of the corridor. Elena approached carefully, checking for signs of forced entry. The door was intact lock, undamaged. Either the contractors hadn't arrived yet, or they were inside waiting. She knocked 3 times firm, but not aggressive. Footsteps. Then a woman's voice, cautious. Yes. Miss Sokolova, I'm here about the piano. You called about a tuning. It was the recognition phrase from the operational protocols. Silence. Then, I don't have a piano. A wrong answer. Nightingale was supposed to respond, come back tomorrow. The fact that she'd said something else meant she was either compromised or warning Elena off. Elena's hand moved to her knife. Miss Sokolova, I'm a friend of Victor's. He asked me to check on you. Another pause. Then the door opened, a crack, security chain still in place. A woman's face appeared, pale and frightened. Victor is dead. I know. I'm sorry. But he sent me to help you. You're in danger. There are people coming. They're already here. The door slammed shut. Elena heard Natasha scream. Then a man's voice, American accent. We've got her. Subject is secure. Moving to secondary location in 5. Elena didn't think. She stepped back and kicked the door just below the lock. Wood splintered. The security chain held for half a second, then tore free from the wall. Elena went through fast, knife in hand, and found herself facing 3 men in civilian clothes with the kind of builds that came from military training. The closest one was holding Natasha, hand over her mouth. The other 2 were reaching for weapons. Elena threw her knife. It caught the first man in the throat. He went down clutching at the blade, making wet, choking sounds. The second man got his gun up, but Elena was already moving. She closed the distance in 2 steps, grabbed his wrist and twisted. The gun discharged into the floor. Elena drove her elbow into his face, felt his nose break, and took the weapon from his suddenly loose grip. The third man had his gun out, now pointed at Elena's chest. Don't move. Elena aimed her stolen weapon at his head. Neither do you. They stood there 3 feet apart, both with lethal angles. The man holding Natasha had released her and was pulling his own weapon. That made 2 guns on Elena, which meant any move she made would probably get her killed. Let her go, Elena said in English. Can't do that, the third man replied. His accent was East Coast, maybe Boston. We've got orders. She comes with us. Orders from Davis. The man's eyes flickered. Just for a second, but it was enough. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Private contractors working off the books, killing American assets for Russian intelligence. What do they pay for that kind of treason? More than $30 million, because that's what Davis got for selling the Prometheus list. The man holding Natasha looked at the third man. She knows about Prometheus. Shut up, the third man snapped. Then to Elena, You're Black Widow. Davis said you'd be a problem. Said we should shoot you on sight. But you didn't, which means you're not sure. Which means maybe you're starting to realize Davis sold you out along with everyone else. Elena kept her weapon steady. You think the FSB is going to let you leave Russia after this? You think they're going to pay you and send you home? You're loose ends. And Russia doesn't leave loose ends alive. She's lying, the man holding Natasha said, but his voice wavered. Am I? Then why did Davis send you to kill an asset the FSB doesn't know about? Why use contractors instead of letting Russian intelligence handle it themselves? Elena shifted her aim slightly. He's tying up loose ends, and you're part of the cleanup. The third man's grip on his weapon tightened. Elena saw the calculation in his eyes, saw him weighing loyalty against survival, saw the exact moment he decided she was right. His weapon lowered half an inch. What's your play? I get Natasha out of Russia. You disappear before the FSB realizes Davis burned you. Everyone lives, everyone gets paid, nobody has to explain bullet holes to Russian police. And Davis goes to prison for treason, along with Cardinal and Bishop and everyone else who sold out American intelligence. The man holding Natasha released her. She stumbled toward Elena, sobbing. They killed my neighbor, Mrs. Pavlova. She answered the door when they came, and they shot her, just killed her, for nothing. Elena kept her weapon on the contractors. You killed a civilian. Collateral damage, the third man said. She saw our faces. You're going to burn for this, Elena said quietly. All of you, because I'm walking out of here with Natasha, and you're going to let me. And then you're going to pray that I'm feeling merciful when I give my report. The third man lowered his weapon completely. Go. But if you're lying about Davis, if this blows back on us, then you can find me. But you won't, because I'm Black Widow, and you're already dead, you just don't know it yet. Elena backed toward the door, keeping her weapon up. Natasha pressed against her side. The contractors didn't move. The one Elena had stabbed was still on the floor, not breathing. The one with the broken nose was conscious, but not functional. In the hallway, Elena grabbed Natasha's hand and ran. They took the stairs down 5 flights at a full sprint. Behind them, no sounds of pursuit. The contractors were cutting their losses, probably already planning their own extraction from Moscow. On the street, Elena flagged down another taxi. Airport, Sheremetyevo, fast. The driver took one look at Natasha's terrified face and Elena's expression and decided not to ask questions. As they drove through Moscow, traffic, Elena pulled out her phone, powered it on long enough to send one more message to the secure email address. Nightingale extracted. Contractors neutralized. Prometheus list intact. Need immediate exfil 2 persons. Black Widow. Then she looked at Natasha, who was crying quietly, shaking with shock and fear. It's going to be okay, Elena said in Russian. I'm getting you out of here. Victor, Natasha whispered. They tortured him. For days. I heard the recordings. They made me listen to prove what would happen if I didn't cooperate. I know. I'm sorry. But we're going to make them pay for what they did to Victor. I promise you that. Natasha wiped her eyes. Who are you? Elena met her gaze. I'm the person who doesn't let traitors win. And I'm going to burn every single one of them. The taxi merged onto the highway, heading toward the airport. Behind them, Moscow faded into the distance lights, disappearing into darkness. And somewhere in Langley, Virginia, Major Davis was about to discover that Black Widow hadn't just survived his trap. She'd escaped it, carrying the evidence that would destroy him. The airport was chaos, travelers rushing through terminals, announcements echoing in Russian and English security checkpoints, processing thousands of passengers. Elena kept Natasha close, moving through the crowds with practiced efficiency. They looked like any other travelers, a businesswoman and her colleague heading home after meetings. Except they were carrying evidence that would dismantle a spy network and save 247 lives. Elena's phone buzzed. The response from her secure message had finally come through, but it wasn't from Admiral Chen or Director Morrison. It was from Margaret Chen, the chief of counterintelligence, whose security clearances had been flagged twice. Black Widow. Received your transmission. Davis contained. Exfil team waiting at Gate 47 Turkish Airlines flight to Istanbul, departing in 90 minutes. Bring Nightingale. Do not approach any other personnel. Trust no one else. Chen. Elena read it 3 times, analyzing every word. Margaret Chen had access to secure communications. She'd responded within minutes of Elena's message, and she'd specifically warned Elena to trust no one else, which meant either Chen was clean and trying to protect her, or Chen was cardinal or bishop and trying to isolate her. "What's wrong?" Natasha asked, noticing Elena's expression. "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." Elena powered down the phone again. "We need to get to Gate 47, but we need to do it carefully." They moved through the terminal, Elena watching for surveillance. She spotted 2 teams immediately FSB, based on their positioning and communication patterns. They were checking passengers looking for someone. Looking for her. Elena altered her route, taking Natasha through a duty-free shop out the other side and down a corridor that bypassed the main security checkpoint. She'd studied Sheremetyevo's layout before the mission, memorizing every entrance, every camera blind spot, every potential escape route. At Gate 47, a woman in her late 30s stood near the boarding area. Dark hair, professional clothes, the kind of face that blended into any crowd. She saw Elena and gave the slightest nod recognition, without acknowledgement. Elena approached cautiously. "Margaret Chen, in person, though I usually prefer to work behind a desk in Virginia rather than playing field operative in Moscow." Chen's voice was calm, but her eyes were constantly scanning the terminal. "We need to move. Davis knows you extracted Nightingale. He's burning everything communications, bank accounts, contacts, and he's got FSB looking for 2 American women traveling together." "How did you know it was Davis?" Elena asked. "I didn't. Not until you sent that message. But once you named Shepard, it all made sense. The compromised operations, the flagged clearances, the way certain intelligence always seemed to leak at exactly the wrong time." Chen pulled out 2 boarding passes. "These will get you through security. Turkish Airlines connecting through Istanbul to New York. You'll be on U.S. soil in 18 hours. Elena took the passes but didn't move toward security. "You could be cardinal or bishop." "I could be, but if I were, you'd already be dead. Davis has teams at every exit. The only reason you're still breathing is because I pulled strings to get this gate isolated." Chen met Elena's eyes. "I know you don't trust anyone right now. I wouldn't either. But you need to make a choice. Get on that plane and live, or stand here questioning me until the FSB arrives." Natasha touched Elena's arm. "She's right. We should go." Elena studied Chen's face, looking for deception, found only exhaustion and determination. "If you're lying, then you'll hunt me down and kill me. I know your reputation, Colonel Rodriguez. That's why I'm helping you. Because Black Widow doesn't fail. And right now, American intelligence needs someone who doesn't fail." Elena made her decision. "Where's Admiral Chen? Is she compromised?" "She's in Washington coordinating the response. Once we have the Prometheus list, she's moving to lock down all 247 officers. But we need that list, Colonel. Do you have it?" Elena pulled out the thumb drive. "Communication logs, bank transfers, and every name on Prometheus. Sergei Volkov gave it to me before he disappeared." Margaret Chen's hand trembled slightly as she took the drive. "This is it. This is everything we need to burn them." She inserted it into a laptop, quickly scanning the files. Her face went pale. "My God, Davis sold them all. Every deep cover officer in Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. He's been planning this for months." "Who are Cardinal and Bishop?" Elena asked. Chen pulled up a file. "I don't have names yet, But based on the communication logs, Cardinal has access to operational planning. Bishop has access to financial systems. Both have been active for at least 3 years, and both are smart enough to hide behind Davis while he takes the fall. Then we need to move fast. Once Davis realizes we have the list, he'll warn them. They'll disappear, and we'll never find them. Already happening? Chen showed Elena her phone. Davis attempted to leave Langley 40 minutes ago. Security stopped him at the gate. He's in custody now, but he's not talking. And 2 senior officers called in sick this morning, Richard Vance and Sarah Mitchell. Both unreachable. Both probably running. Elena felt a chill. Vance, the deputy director, with the Russian wife. Mitchell, whose name Elena had been using as cover. They're Cardinal and Bishop. Probably. But we need proof, and we need to find them before they alert the FSB that we have the Prometheus list. Chen closed the laptop. Get on that plane, Colonel. Get this intelligence to Admiral Chen. Let the people who get paid to hunt moles do their job. You've done enough. Have I? Elena thought of the 12 operators dead in Syria. Thought of Orlov dying in an FSB interrogation room. Thought of Natasha's neighbor shot for answering her door. How many people died because I didn't see Davis's betrayal sooner? You couldn't have known. He was a decorated officer with 23 years of service. He passed every polygraph, every background check. The only reason you exposed him is because you were too stubborn to die when he wanted you to. Chen's expression softened. You did good work, Colonel. Now finish it. Get on that plane. Elena looked at Natasha, who was watching the exchange with frightened eyes. The secretary had lost her husband to war, her neighbor to murder, and 6 years of her life to espionage. She deserved to get home safely. Deserved to start over somewhere far from Moscow and the FSB and the violence that had consumed her existence. Go ahead to the gate, Elena told Natasha in Russian. Show them your boarding pass. I'll be right behind you. Natasha hesitated. You're not coming. I am. I promise. I just need 1 more minute. Natasha squeezed her hand, then walked toward security. Elena watched her go, making sure she passed through without incident. Then she turned to Margaret Chen. You said Davis isn't talking. What if I could make him talk? Chen's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting? Davis sent me to Moscow to die. He gave me compromised documents, a tracking beacon, and instructions designed to get me killed. He thought I was expendable, thought I'd panic or fail or get caught. Elena's voice was cold. I want him to see what happens when Black Widow survives. Colonel Davis is in custody at Langley. You can't just... Can't I? I'm officially dead. Remember, no backup, no recognition, no existence, which means I can do things that official officers can't, things that get results. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a key card. Interrogation Room 3, Sub-Level 2. Davis is being held there until we can transfer him to a secure facility. You'd have maybe 20 minutes before anyone realizes what's happening. Elena took the key card. And if I get results, then maybe we find Cardinal and Bishop before they disappear. Maybe we save those 247 officers. Maybe we make Davis pay for every person he got killed. Chen paused. But if you do this, you do it alone. I can't be associated with whatever happens in that room. I've been alone since I got on that plane to Moscow. I'm used to it. One more thing. Chen pulled out a phone different from the encrypted one Elena had been carrying. This is a secure line directly to Admiral Chen. She knows you're alive. She knows what you've done, and she wants to talk to you when this is over. Elena pocketed the phone. Tell Natasha I'll meet her at the gate. Colonel. Chen's voice stopped her. What you're about to do, it's off the books. No authorization, no oversight. If it goes wrong, then I never existed. I know the drill. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's the life I chose, remember, service without recognition. Sacrifice without applause. She walked away before Chen could respond, moving through the terminal toward an exit that would take her away from the gate, away from safety, away from the extraction that would end this nightmare. Because Elena Rodriguez had learned something in the past 72 hours. She'd learned that sometimes the only way to burn a mole was to become the fire. And right now, Major Davis needed to burn. The flight from Moscow to Washington took 11 hours, but Elena made it in 9 by catching a military transport that Chen had arranged. She landed at Andrews Air Force Base at 300 local time, exhausted and wired, running on adrenaline and coffee and rage. A car was waiting. The driver was Air Force young and professional, and he didn't ask questions when Elena climbed into the back seat, still wearing the clothes she'd worn in Moscow. They drove through the darkness to Langley, past security checkpoints that seemed to expect her down into sub-levels that most employees didn't know existed. The driver left her at a steel door marked only with a number 3. Elena used the key card Chen had given her. The lock clicked open. Inside, Major Davis sat at a metal table, hands cuffed to a bolt in the center. He looked tired, older than he had on the plane. The confident handler who'd briefed her about Moscow was gone, replaced by a man who knew his career and his life were over. He looked up when Elena entered, and for a moment genuine shock crossed his face. "You're supposed to be dead." "I've heard that before." Elena closed the door behind her, locked it. "Turns out I'm hard to kill. The FSB had teams on you, contractors at Nightingale's apartment. You shouldn't have made it out." "But I did. Which means you failed, again." Elena sat across from him close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the dried blood on her jacket from the contractor she'd killed. "How long have you been Shepard Davis? How long have you been selling out American intelligence? I'm not saying anything without a lawyer." "You're not getting a lawyer. This isn't an official interrogation. This is a conversation between two people who know how the game is played." Elena leaned forward. "You sent me to Moscow knowing I'd die. You gave me compromised documents and a tracking beacon and orders designed to put me in front of FSB guns. You burned Orlov and 3 assets and 12 operators in Syria, and then you sold the Prometheus list for $30 million. Davis said nothing, but his jaw tightened. "I'm not here to make you confess," Elena continued. "You'll do that eventually. The evidence we have is overwhelming. You'll spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison, isolated, forgotten, while the intelligence community you betrayed moves on without you. That's already decided." "Then why are you here?" "Because I want to know why. Why betray everything you claimed to believe in? Why get good people killed? Why sell out officers who trusted you with their lives?" Davis was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, "Because the system is broken. Because we're fighting wars that can't be won, propping up governments that don't deserve support, sacrificing lives for politicians who don't care." His voice hardened. "I spent 23 years watching good people die for bad reasons. Watching assets get burned because someone in Washington changed their mind about priorities. Watching budgets get cut while we're told to do more with less. So you decided to get rich while people died. I decided to stop pretending it mattered. The Cold War is over, but we're still playing the same games. Spies betraying spies, countries stealing secrets that everyone already knows, operatives dying in alleys for intelligence that gets filed and forgotten." Davis met her eyes. "You think you're making a difference, Rodriguez? You're not. You're a tool. A weapon that gets used and discarded when you're no longer useful. Just like I was. Just like Orlov was." Orlov died believing his sacrifice meant something, Elena said quietly. He died protecting assets and missions, and the idea that some things are worth fighting for. You don't get to compare yourself to him. He died screaming in a basement while FSB officers laughed. That's the reality of this work. That's what we do to each other. Davis leaned forward as far as his restraints allowed. You want to know the truth, Colonel, Cardinal, and Bishop have been active longer than I have. They're the ones who recruited me. They're the ones who built this network. And when you burn me, they'll disappear and rebuild somewhere else, somewhere. You haven't won. You've just delayed the inevitable. Then give me their names. Why would I do that? Because they're going to let you take the fall. Because they're already running while you sit here in handcuffs. Because the $30 million you earned is in accounts you'll never access from prison. Elena's voice was cold. You're expendable to them, Davis, just like you tried to make me expendable. She could see the calculation in his eyes, the realization that she was right, that Cardinal and Bishop would sacrifice him without hesitation to save themselves. Richard Vance, Davis said finally. Deputy Director of Russian Operations, codename Cardinal. He's been feeding intelligence to the FSB since 2019. His wife wasn't just Russian, she was SVR placed in Washington to develop him as an asset. They married in 2003. He's been compromised for 20 years. Elena felt the pieces falling into place. 20 years. That explained so many burned operations, so many compromised missions. Vance had been bleeding American intelligence for 2 decades, and no one had seen it. And Bishop... Davis smiled, and it was a terrible expression. That's the beautiful part. Bishop isn't at Langley. Bishop is at the Pentagon. Someone you know, actually. Someone who helped you expose Captain Torres. Elena's blood went cold. Colonel Mitchell? Sarah Mitchell, Deputy Chief of Station, currently assigned to Pentagon operations. She was the one who gave Torres access to Admiral Stone's credentials. She was the one who helped frame you for the Syria leak. And she was the one who told me you'd figured it out, which is why I had to accelerate your Moscow operation. Davis leaned back. She's probably already gone. Disappeared into a new identity, a new life while you waste time talking to me. Elena stood. You're wrong about one thing, Davis. This work does matter. Not because of politicians or budgets or geopolitics. It matters because people like Orlov and Nightingale and those 12 operators in Syria believed it mattered. They gave their lives believing that sacrifice for something bigger than themselves was worth it. You lost sight of that. You forgot why you started doing this in the first place. And you think you'll remember. You think you'll stay pure and motivated while the system grinds you down. Davis's voice followed her to the door. Give it 20 years, Rodriguez. See if you still believe in anything except survival. Elena paused at the door. I'll never be like you, because I know what I'm fighting for. And it's not money or cynicism or my own comfort. It's the idea that some things are worth defending even when it's hard. Even when no one knows your name. Even when the only reward is knowing you did the right thing. She walked out, leaving Davis alone in the interrogation room with his betrayals and his $30 million he'd never spend. In the hallway, Admiral Chen was waiting. The real Admiral Chen, not Margaret. She looked exhausted, like she'd been awake for days coordinating the response to the Prometheus list. Did he talk? Chen asked. He gave me Vance and Mitchell, Cardinal and Bishop. They're the ones who recruited him. We know. Margaret Chen identified them 40 minutes ago using the communication logs you provided. FBI has teams moving on Vance's home now. But Mitchell... Chen's expression darkened. She disappeared 8 hours ago, cleared out her apartment, emptied her bank accounts, and vanished. We have alerts at every airport, every border crossing, but so far nothing. She's had 20 years to plan her escape, Elena said. She probably has half a dozen identities ready. Then we'll spend the next 20 years hunting her. No one betrays American intelligence and gets away with it. Chen paused. The Prometheus list, we've made contact with 231 officers so far. 16 are already moving to exfiltration points. The rest will be out within 48 hours. You saved their lives, Colonel. Sergei Volkov saved their lives. I just delivered the message. And Natasha Nightingale. Safe. Margaret Chen got her on a flight to New York. She'll be processed through the defector program, given a new identity, relocated somewhere far from Moscow. Chen studied Elena's face. You look like hell, Colonel. I feel like hell. But the job's done. Davis is contained. The network is exposed. The Prometheus list is secure. Elena's voice was flat, emotionless. What happens now? Now you rest. You've been operational for 72 hours straight. You've survived assassination attempts, burned a spy network, and extracted a high-value asset from hostile territory. You've earned some time off. Time off to do what? Go home and pretend I have a normal life. Pretend I'm not the person who kills people in Moscow apartments and interrogates prisoners in black sites. Elena shook her head. There is no time off for people like me, Admiral. There's just the next mission. Then consider this your next mission. Take 2 weeks. Go somewhere quiet. Process what happened. Let the therapists do their job. Then, when you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. What does come next? My cover is blown. Black Widow is compromised. Every intelligence service in the world knows I exist now. Chen smiled slightly. Which makes you useless for deep cover work, but perfect for something else. I'm putting together a task force officers who specialize in hunting moles, exposing traitors, cleaning up messes that regular counterintelligence can't touch. It's off the books, no official authorization, operating in the shadows. We need someone to lead it. Someone who's already dead on paper and has nothing left to lose. Elena considered it. A life spent hunting people like Davis and Torres and Mitchell. A life lived entirely in the shadows, with no recognition, no official existence, no end except death or retirement into an identity that wasn't her own. It was exactly what she'd been doing for the past 6 years. But now, at least she'd be doing it with purpose. I'll think about it, Elena said. Good. Because we need you, Colonel. The people like Davis and Vance and Mitchell, they're not anomalies. They're symptoms of a larger problem. And we need someone who understands how they think, how they operate, how they hide. Someone who can get inside their heads and tear them apart from the inside. Someone like me. Someone exactly like you. Admiral Chen turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Torres, the captain from the Pentagon tribunal. He's been talking, trying to cut a deal. He says he has information about other networks, other moles we haven't found yet. He wants immunity in exchange for names. Don't give it to him, Elena said. He killed 12 men. He betrayed Admiral Stone's trust for 18 months. He doesn't deserve mercy. I agree. But the intelligence he has could save lives, could prevent other operations from being compromised. Sometimes we have to make deals with devils to catch bigger devils. Then make your deal. But make sure he knows he's still going to prison. Make sure he knows that betrayal has consequences even when it's useful. Elena's voice was cold. We can't let people think they can kill Americans and then buy their way out with information. Agreed. Torres will spend the rest of his life in a cell, but at least his betrayal will mean something. Chen walked toward the elevator. 2 weeks, Colonel. Rest, recover, then come find me. We have work to do. Elena watched her go, then made her way up to ground level. The sun was rising over Langley, painting the Virginia sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, Sarah Mitchell was running. Somewhere out there, Richard Vance was in FBI custody, his 20-year betrayal finally exposed. Somewhere out there, 247 intelligence officers were getting emergency messages telling them to run, to hide, to survive. And somewhere in Russia, Sergei Volkov was on a boat heading toward the Black Sea, carrying the hope that his courage would be rewarded with freedom. Elena pulled out the phone Margaret Chen had given her. There were 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. She called it back. "Colonel Rodriguez." The voice was familiar. "Admiral Stone, from the Pentagon Tribunal." "Admiral, I'm surprised you have this number." "Admiral Chen gave it to me. Said you'd want to hear this." Stone's voice was heavy. "We found Torres's network. 5 other officers, all receiving payments from the same offshore accounts. All of them involved in operations security personnel vetting classified communications. They've been active for 7 years. We never would have found them if you hadn't exposed Torres." "How many operations did they compromise?" "We're still counting, but conservatively dozens, maybe hundreds. People died because of them, Colonel. Good people who trusted that their own command structure wasn't working against them." Elena closed her eyes. What happens to them? Same thing that's happening to Torres. Court-martial life sentences, no possibility of parole. We're making an example. Letting everyone know that betrayal has consequences. Stone paused. "I wanted to thank you, Colonel, for what you did at the tribunal, for having the courage to stand there in handcuffs and tell us the truth, even when it meant putting yourself in danger. You saved my life. You saved a lot of lives." "I was just doing my job, Admiral." "No, you were doing something more important than a job. You were defending an ideal. The idea that integrity matters, that honor matters, that some things are worth sacrificing for." Stone's voice cracked slightly. "I won't forget that, and I'll make damn sure the military doesn't forget it either." The call ended. Elena stood alone in the parking lot, watching the sunrise, feeling the weight of the past 72 hours settling into her bones. She'd been accused of treason, hunted through Moscow, betrayed by her own handler, and forced to kill to survive. She'd exposed 3 moles, saved 247 officers, and delivered justice for 12 operators who'd died in Syria. And no one would ever know her name. That was the bargain. That was the price of serving in the shadows. Recognition traded for effectiveness. Applause traded for results. A normal life traded for the ability to do things that mattered. Elena had made that trade 6 years ago when she'd become Black Widow. She'd make it again tomorrow when she accepted Admiral Chen's offer to lead the task force. She'd make it every day for the rest of her career, however long that lasted. Because some things were worth defending. Some fights were worth fighting. And some people had to stand in the gap between civilization and chaos, whether anyone knew their names or not. Elena Rodriguez walked to her car, started the engine, and drove away from Langley as the sun climbed higher in the sky. She had 2 weeks to rest, 2 weeks to recover, 2 weeks to prepare for the next mission, the next impossible choice, the next enemy hiding in plain sight. Then she'd do it all again. Because that was who she was. That was what Black Widow did. The war room had gone silent when Admiral Chen revealed her call sign during the Pentagon Tribunal. But the real silence was the one Elena carried: service without recognition, sacrifice without applause, justice delivered in shadows where heroes never got to hear the cheers. That silence didn't bother her anymore. It was the sound of work being done, the sound of lives being saved, the sound of traitors being brought to justice by someone they'd never see coming. And in that silence, Elena Rodriguez had found something more valuable than fame or gratitude or recognition. She'd found purpose. She'd found meaning. She'd found the one thing that made all the sacrifice worthwhile, the certainty that she was making a difference, one mission at a time, one exposed mole at a time, one saved life at a time. The war room went silent when they learned her call sign. But Black Widow's work was never silent. It echoed through every life she saved, every traitor she burned, every mission she completed against impossible odds. That echo would outlast her name, outlast her service, outlast her life. And that was enough. That was everything. That was why she'd chosen this path, and why she'd walk it until the day she couldn't walk anymore. Because someone had to stand in the shadows. Someone had to fight the fights no one else could win. Someone had to be Black Widow. And Elena Rodriguez had decided a long time ago that someone would be her.